It was a cold, foggy night as James drove along the winding road of Hollow Ridge, his headlights barely cutting through the thick mist. He was returning from a long business trip, exhausted but eager to get home. The road ahead was silent and eerie, with the dark forest looming on either side. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves from the wind. Suddenly, through the fog, James noticed a figure standing by the side of the road. His heart skipped a beat as his headlights illuminated a young woman, no older than 25, drenched, as if she'd been caught in the rain. She wore a pale, flowing dress that clung to her thin frame. She stood there, motionless, with her thumb out, asking for a ride. James hesitated for a moment. He had heard stories about people who vanished in the woods around Hollow Ridge, but those were just urban legends, right? He shook off his nerves. It's too late to leave someone stranded out here, he thought, slowing down and pulling over. The woman approached the car, her steps slow and deliberate. When she reached the window, her pale face came into view, her wide eyes filled with a sadness James couldn't place. "Can I help you?" James asked, trying to mask his unease. "Thank you for stopping," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I need a ride. To the old Hollow Bridge. It's just a little further up the road." James nodded, unlocking the passenger door. She slipped in, barely making a sound. As the car started moving again, he couldn't shake the chill that seemed to settle over the car. The woman sat silently beside him, staring straight ahead. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and her dress still looked damp, though there had been no rain all evening. James tried to make small talk to ease the tension. "Out this late alone? Must have been a long night for you too." She glanced at him with her dark, hollow eyes and gave a faint smile. "It's always a long night." That response made James's skin crawl, but he didn't want to pry further. They drove in silence for a few more minutes until the shape of an old, crumbling bridge emerged through the fog. The Hollow Bridge had been abandoned for years, a relic of an older road that no longer connected to any useful path. It was a place steeped in local legends, many of which James had heard but never believed. "We're here," the woman said softly, her eyes fixated on the bridge ahead. James pulled over, confused. "Are you sure this is where you want to be? There's nothing out here." The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for the door handle and slowly stepped out of the car. Before closing the door, she turned and spoke one last time. "Thank you for the ride. I'm going home now." With that, she walked toward the bridge, her figure gradually fading into the fog. James watched, confused and unsettled, but he didn't follow her. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He shook his head, chalking it up to fatigue, and drove off. But as the minutes passed, an uneasy feeling gnawed at him. Unable to resist the urge, he turned his car around and headed back toward the bridge. As he pulled up, the fog had thinned, and the entire bridge was visible. The woman was gone. James got out and walked toward the bridge, feeling an odd pull. At the entrance of the bridge, a small, weathered sign caught his eye. The words were faded, but the date was clear, October 1953. Below that, a name, Margaret Pierce. He stared at the name, his heart pounding. That was decades ago. And then it hit him. Margaret Pierce had been the girl from all the old stories. The girl who died in a car accident on this very road, thrown from the car into the icy waters below the bridge. She had been trying to hitchhike home when a passing driver lost control in the rain and crashed. Her body had never been found. James stumbled back, the realization dawning on him. He had just given a ride to a ghost. As he stood there in disbelief, he felt a chill in the air. He glanced back at his car and froze. There on the passenger seat lay a single, waterlogged handkerchief embroidered with the name, Margaret. The fog swirled around him, and in the distance he thought he could hear the faint echo of a woman's voice, whispering, "I'm finally home." Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more of our content, please hit the subscribe button.